Welcome to Full Throttle Talk, the podcast where horsepower meets conversation. From supercars to classic legends, high revving tech to motorsport mayhem, we cover it all. Straight from the driver's seat, whether you're a gearhead or racer or just love the thrill of the open road, you're in the right place. Buckle up, hit the gas, and let's go full throttle into today's episode. Welcome back. It's Tim Harrison. This is your favorite new weekly automotive enthusiast podcast. And I'm here with Dave and Casey. Now, you'll notice that Paul is not joining us this week. In case you didn't know it, Paul is recovering from a fairly major operation. And I have great news for all of you because I know a lot of you guys are Paul fans and you're knowing about his procedure. He is doing fantastic. And we hope very much to have him back on the show next week. And Paul, if you're watching, I promise you we're going to do our best to make fun of you during this week's show because you cannot defend yourself. All right. So that's a commitment we all have to make.
Absolutely.
Right. So on this week's show, we are going to do, as promised, we're going to focus on, first of all, what did everyone do in cars this week? We've all had busy weeks. Automotive news that caught their attention. And this is the big one. I know you guys are waiting for this. A lot of comments on Instagram waiting for the 997 buyer's guide. So we're going to be focusing on that. And then we're going to do this, that, or the other, your dream car for under $250,000, one car option, one car. We're going to present three options, and then we're going to vote on which one we think should win. We're also going to be getting to listener questions. We're going to integrate listener questions in a lot of the topics. All right, without any further delay, Casey, welcome to today's podcast.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm very good. So, Casey, what have you done in cars this week? What was the most exciting thing? I've been reading your information on WhatsApp, and you are always having amazing car experiences.
So a couple of cool things. If you go over to my Instagram or Porsche Club of America's Instagram, I got a couple of cool cars together the other day for a photo shoot. We were supposed to do it for the 4th of July, but couldn't get it lined up. It would be really awesome if I was able to have that picture behind me, but I did not prepare for that. But it was a Riviera Blue 993 RS Club Sport, a white 4-liter, and a red Carrera GT. And if you put those together, it looks pretty awesome. So go check out either my Instagram, which is Group C Curation, or Porsche Club of America, and it's all on there. I know that we were going back and forth on Monday, but I think all of us are going to be at Luft. Is that correct?
Cool. Be great to see you guys there.
Yeah.
By the
awesome.
way,
Yep.
Casey, your links and Dave's links and Paul's links are down below in the show description, whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all their Instagrams and their phone numbers if they gave permission for me to share, which I think they all did. So there you go. Yes. What are you looking at? So have you been to a Luft before? I have not, Casey.
I went to Air Water. I think the first one that they did in Costa Mesa, which was really enjoyable. But there was a ton of people there. And I'm more looking forward to the Luft in Durham because one, it's close. I'm planning on driving down the 964 with wife and dog, which would be pretty rad. And yeah, it's just going to be great and hopefully a little bit more intimate than Air Water because that was just a ton of people everywhere. And I think this is going to be a little bit more restricted, which is going to be great.
I think Paul mentioned that one of those Luft events, it may not have been a Luft event by another one. There was something like 5,000 people that showed up. This was in Southern California. That's just amazing.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely. I've been to the Indianapolis one that was about 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4, and then one of the LA ones. They're always going to be crowded. So it's good to get, I mean, it's spread out depending on this particular venue, I think will be pretty spread out as well. Really killer, gorgeous venue, this American Tobacco Company campus. And that's really what Luft is all about. It's all that staging of these pictures, these cars. You'd think they were all just going to be lined up, car after car after car after car. But what's so great about Luft is they're spread out all over the place. And as you're walking around, you're walking around buildings, and all of a sudden you'll come around a corner and there'll be this unbelievable car in some fantastic position for photography and so on. And very highly curated event, which is what makes it so great. This was supposed to actually happen during COVID. I want to say it was 2020 or 21. I can't remember which, but they had to cancel this event in Durham because of COVID. So it's a relaunch of this one. So it's going to be great. And the poster, which is behind me here, oh, I think that poster is awesome.
Great poster. Well,
It's going to be a great event.
We're flying in, and you're going to hopefully have our blue car ready to rumble. So, Dave, what's the coolest thing that happened in your automotive life since our last podcast?
Well, cool is always a relative term. Obviously, business carries on. So we had to, move some cars, and I sold a few cars this past week. Obviously, got signed up for Luft, as well as submitting two cars that I plan or would like to display. I think you submitted a car as well. So I submitted this chiffon white car with the boho interior as one of the cars that I would like to show here at Luft. The other one is the My Rally car, which is this 1980 911 SC Coupe that's got some mild mods on it and a fantastic interior. And this is a car I've probably done 20 different driving rallies in. Hopefully, one or each or one or both will get accepted. And, and if not, okay, too, because there's always plenty of fantastic cars. And even the parking lot, the overflow parking lot for guys that didn't get into the show is fantastic to walk around in too. So there'll be some fantastic cars there without a doubt.
Yeah,
So did
that's the cool thing about Porsche events. Even if you aren't able to show a car or even pay for a ticket to get in, the Luft isn't that what was it, $35, something like that? It's very affordable, relatively
yeah,
speaking.
yeah.
But the parking lot's almost always better. It's
That's very
definitely
true. And the parking lot is great at Louvre for sure. Obviously, some more water cooled cars. This was a car I sold this week, and I'm only showing you the interior because I think it's the stellar part of this car. Um, this was an 86 white on red 911 Targa, can red interior, absolutely gorgeous car. It was something I had sold a couple of years ago, actually, and then the owner wants to go up to a 993, so I'm on the hunt for a 993 for him right now, and he wanted to sell this one. So this was such a nice car that, I mean, we moved this in just a couple of days. So it was a great car, and that was kind of the week. It's been busy, but a lot of cool car stuff, a lot of cool car people coming to buy Thunderworks.
So I wrote down two questions. This isn't part of our agenda, but don't worry. So we're talking about selling cars, and this is a listener question. As I said, I was going to try and integrate those into the show this week. This is from maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Somebody asked about which platform is best for selling certain types of cars or selling cars in general. And this, I assume, was somebody that was focusing on Porsches. So the question in essence was, why why bring a trailer versus Cars and Bid versus P Car Market versus just putting on Facebook Marketplace? Why would, and Casey, I heard you say prior to the show that you've got something like over a dozen cars right now that are hopefully in queue to be sold on Bring a Trailer. Did I hear you say that?
Yes, some of them are going to be privately brokered. There's some kind of bigger dollar cars that often transact better without kind of being in the eye. And a lot of clients actually now do prefer private brokering over cars being sold publicly, especially very, very expensive cars. That's not necessarily the cars that I'm representing privately, but really, really expensive cars traditionally like to be sold so that they're out of the eye of the public. Even though the people that are in the know that do the big brokering, like Sterling on Instagram and such, you do see the cars pop up, but you rarely see a VIN number and you rarely see the amount of money that the cars transact for. But yeah, I've got about 13, 14 cars right now that clients have trusted me with to either consign to Bring a Trailer or one of the other auction sites. I would traditionally tell you that with the type of people that do pay attention and comment and Bring a Trailer, as long as the car, every aspect of the car can be explained and you are being tremendously honest with it, I think that's a great platform and by far the best place to get the most amount of money for vehicles. And Dave, would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I think it's for me, I think Bring a Trailer, and I just sold a car. I sold a 2002 911 cab last week that closed on Sunday. And I was extremely happy with the results on that car. And the key there, to your point, it's got to be photographed very well and pretty, right? Like it can't be just, take your phone out there and snap a few pictures in some parking lot if you really want to get the real money on Bring a Trailer. You need to submit 150 to 200 pictures typically and detailing every aspect of the car because everyone is buying these cars literally off the pictures. So
Well, and you guys are spending a lot of time with comments too. And
yeah, oh gosh,
that's the
all
thing I
week.
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and that can be a problem because there's
I
trolls on
bet.
Bring a Trailer too that will just literally blow your auction up for no good reason, theoretically. I mean, sometimes that's the way I feel about it.
How
And
many
But
let me,
car
oh,
how many cars can you guys represent on Bring a Trailer given the volume of questions and whatnot? Like Casey, how many can you have up on auction before you go bonkers with having to tend to all of them?
two, two at a
Yeah, I was
time,
gonna
because I
say.
mean, it's just me. And honestly, I believe that if it's more than that, I wouldn't feel like I was giving my best effort for a client. But a lot of it is the predictability of what questions are going to be asked. I am working currently on a BJ8 Austin Healey 3000. And I am not super familiar with the cars. So what I did was I spent probably 8 hours over the course of a few days combing through every BJ8 Austin Healey 3000 auction to make sure that I knew what questions were going to be asked before they were going to be asked. And that put me in touch with the head of the registry for the Austin Healey 3000 BJ8. And he and I are now buddies. And I know a tremendous amount about the cars. And the car that I'm going to represent had some questions. Before, like, even though I have all of these cars in queue, there's a tremendous amount of time and energy that goes into vetting and making sure that the car is, if it's not perfect, represented to the point where it is honest. Because the last thing that you would want is for somebody to get a car and to not be happy with it and then to make a problem with it after the fact. So
Well,
making sure,
but that's a really good point because I bought cars off Bring a Trailer directly from the owners before, and in every case they misrepresented the car every single case. And when I bought cars from guys that were professional auction reps like you are, I never had any problem. I knew exactly what to expect, and I wouldn't have. I'm not saying I wouldn't have bought the cars had I known about the problem, but I won't buy the cars from those particular sellers again because they knowingly didn't disclose the things. That's what you're saying right there. Now, Casey, you said something else too, which is really important. You said that on the more expensive cars that you're intentionally not putting in VINs. I know the reason why you're not doing it, but can you explain that to other people?
I mean, it can be interpreted a number of different ways, but honestly, with very significant cars, seeing, and especially if you look at a Carfax report and see that a car that is either sat on a dealer's website for an extended amount of time, um, you just, every time a car shows up in existence, it becomes devalued. If you see a car that's been sold 8 times, like there was a car that I was going to bring up, but I probably won't bring it up in depth. But there's a what I believe is peak 918, right? And let me see if I can pull up a picture of it here
Well,
while
you're
I'm talking.
because what you're saying is people can search by VIN. In essence, you can just drop a VIN in Google or whatever, and then you'll have all the sales history and all the rest of it. That's what
Th-
some people are trying
There's
to
a
avoid.
there's a tremendous website out there called classic.com, which
Yep.
is fantastic. And that basically is the nerdiest way to catalog everything. And I've got a good friend that works on that website that we could probably have on the podcast if you'd like. But the car behind me currently is what I believe is peak 918, right? It is a no paint 918, which I believe they only made two of. And the interior, I can probably pull up a picture of that as well. But this car has a Pearl-on interior, meaning that it's a fire retardant versus the leather that they traditionally have. This, to me, would traditionally be the kind of car that would trade off market. If you look at the Carfax report, I think it had 3 or 4 owners. It's got some of those Dave floor mats in it as well. But this car is probably going to set a record for the highest publicly transacted 918 ever. It's on Bring a Trailer currently. I think it has 2 days left. Last time I looked at it, I think it was $2.5 million.
Oh, so let me ask a question. You're saying a lot of really interesting things. Aside from the fact that you're saying no paint, so I assume it's a full-on exposed carbon fiber. Is that what that means?
It's matte. Yeah, I think it's just a matte primer.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that existed.
It,
But
so they
so
made two of them. I mean, they did not advertise this, but this is traditionally the kind of car that would trade under the radar.
that's
Um,
it. It's so funny though, because you think about it, Porsche can charge extra because they didn't paint the car. I mean, God bless them,
Yeah,
right?
we'll get to that some other point because you know how I feel about paint to sample. But this
Yeah.
is traditionally the kind of car that would sell off market. Um, but this is going to probably set a record, which will in turn raise all values of Visoc 918s across the board because, I mean, it doesn't get cooler than this. Like, yeah, you can get a paint to sample one with all kinds of stuff in it, but give me a car with no paint and pearl on interior. I mean, come on, nobody else is, you would win literally every Rennsport reunion parking lot or Luft parking lot or any of those things. But we were talking about other auction sites. I think there's a lot less scrutiny on websites like PCar Market
Mm.
and Cars and Bids. I don't look very often at Cars and Bids, not saying that it's not necessarily a good auction site. It's just that it's just not on my radar. I spend a lot of time on PCar Market because, of course, I do focus a lot on Porsches, and I have sold some personal things on there, wheels, those kinds of things, because I think they have a good marketplace for that. But bring a trailer, in my opinion, other than a major auction house that would represent, let's say, a very significant car, brings the most amount of money, and that's where I focus a lot of my time and energy.
Okay, so let me ask this question because you were talking about that 918. Dave, you can jump in here as well. If I had that 918, my first thought would be RM or Gooding. Why and ask, obviously they'd want a car like that for Monterey. So that the listeners and the viewers can understand why bring a trailer and let's talk about seller fees. Let's talk about where you're most likely going to net the most money. Either one of you guys can jump in.
Okay. Well, I mean, as far as bring a trailer is concerned, I think they have a max cap, and I'm not sure if that's the same for one of these cars like this, but it used to be $5,000 was the total commission you would pay if that car sold
To the
on.
buyer, though, that's a
And,
buyer commission, right?
correct, correct, correct.
Not a
And
seller.
yeah, but that makes a giant difference still from the buy side too, right? Because if I'm going to buy, and normally I'm going to pay 12%, something like that through an RM auction, that's a big difference, right? And the max cap that they've now bumped up to $7,000. I mean, think of what that would be on a $2.5 million car at 12%, right? So it's
It's
a
$300,000.
yeah, I
That
mean it's
is
a
amazing, isn't
giant
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
giant difference in the cost to sell the car on Bring a Trailer, and you are bringing probably even a larger audience when you put a car like that on Bring a Trailer. Now
Well, let's,
the
yeah, go.
downside though is if the car doesn't meet its reserve
Mm.
and the car hasn't hit reserve on that online auction, it's now always branded as a car that didn't sell. And the internet's a forever kind of thing. So you look up that VIN or you look up that description of that car somewhere down the road, and now you'll see the car didn't sell. And where the value, kind of capped out. So
Well,
that's
so
one of the
it,
downsides.
but from the financial perspective, just so everyone's understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on Bring a Trailer, so if maybe not on a really crazy car like that 918 that Casey had, but on a normal car, you're going to have to pay to have the car shipped to the auction house. You're going to sometimes have to pay storage fees. You're going to have to pay whatever cleanup fees they have. Pay, lots of fees. And then as a seller, this is what people don't understand. You have to pay a commission. And then on the buyer has to pay a commission. And I think in Monterey, to answer my own question, I think the seller has to pay 10%. You guys might know better than me. And then I know the buyer commissions are at least 10%. So when a car sells at Monterey at one of these, you're looking at 20% to the auction house. And now here's the real question, and Casey, this would be an analytical, precise question. So do you think that on average, a car is going to sell this for the same on Bring a Trailer that it would at a live auction house? What do you think statistically? How does it sort out?
I think that very significant vehicles sell for a lot more money at real auctions. When I say significant vehicles, I mean things like rare Ferraris, not SF90s or Speciales. I think those are all day long bring a trailer cars, but I'm talking about, weird stuff, stuff that says 250 or 275 at the beginning of it. I think cars with significant race history um, often do significantly better on at real auction houses than on bring a trailer. I would never recommend selling a Le Mans winning car, a Le Mans placing car, a Daytona winning car on Bring a Trailer, because I don't believe that it's of the type of vehicle. I believe that it would do significantly better at a real auction house. Not saying Bring a Trailer isn't, because it's a great source for a lot of people. But I do believe that those significant vehicles need to be represented correctly. I've talked about Ray Schaefer on here before, but he's a very good friend of mine that works for Broad Arrow. And the representation that he does for Broad Arrow at these auctions for these significant Porsches is amazing. I think it was Amelia. I don't know if I think it got pretty high bid, but I know he sold it after the fact, an SCRS,
Hmm.
which, if you know what an SCRS is, they made 21 of them. They built them to go rally racing in the early 80s. There is no cooler RS car than that. And Ray did an amazing job representing that car. And I believe that that car has set a benchmark uh, in that whole realm of vehicle. So the type of vehicle that it is, normal-ish cars that they built a number of, Bring a Trailer is a perfect place. You're going to get great money. You're going to get top dollar as long as you can represent the car correctly and honestly. Honestly is the key, because, as you said, Tim, I look after cars that came from Bring a Trailer that were not represented honestly, and it's traditionally a lot of money in the long run. But making sure that you are comfortable with the seller, and making sure that you do your due diligence is huge in that regard. But at the same time, at a real auction house, they don't have as many pictures traditionally as what you see on Bring a Trailer. So
Mhm.
unless you're in unless you send somebody there to inspect a car, I think you have a better odds of seeing an honest car at at Bring a Trailer. But I'm at the same point where if I loved a car on Bring a Trailer and I had 7 days, or if it's a premium auction, 10 days for it to close, I would do everything I could to have a pre-purchase inspection done of that car before I bid.
Well, absolutely. So actually, you're bringing up a question that I had, and I've been really noodling this, and I don't know the answer to it. Now, granted, I haven't been the most attentive as I maybe should have been to for the old Porsche world primarily. But I'll say when I was over visiting with Dave and some of these other experiences, and I'm sure Luke is going to blow my mind. Can you guys explain to me what's happened in the automotive enthusiast space? And really, it's noticeably in the last maybe less than 10 years, 5 or 6 years, that has caused the passion for old 911s in particular to go where it's gone. I truly have never seen anything like it in my entire enthusiastic, Porsche enthusiastic lifetime. And again, I'm just to emphasize this. Some of you guys don't realize because you've been part of it that in the last 5 or 6 years, for sure, there has been an absolute global explosion of passion for 911s that I wonder if it's even ever existed before anything like this in any other, car space. Do you guys have opinions on that?
I
Oh,
mean,
of
it's
course.
easy. I think it's all about poster slash Gran Turismo. If
Huh.
those cars existed when during your formative years of being a 8-year old through a 20-year old, and those cars existed on your wall and you aspired to own them, like that justification for higher education poster, that to me is the key reason why there's an explosion of all these cars.
Well,
Part of the re
but I'm talking guys that are younger. Casey, when I was at Dave's
Yeah.
shop, he's got a lot of dudes that are, I would say most of them were younger than 35. Than these guys that are in their 20s. I've ran into people in their 20s that are, really focusing on being lifelong Porsche techs. I just what I'm trying to say, and I'm saying it poorly, is like when we lived part-time in Southern California, the 911 enthusiasm there was bonkers, but it is nothing like it is now. I mean, Luftgekühlt is just for example of what's happened. And these things are happening all over the world. That particular enthusiasm for old air-cooled 911s is what I don't understand. I'm trying to wrap my mind around it.
I
Dave,
think
why
it's
don't you
it's
go
a
first
function
and
of
then I'll
it's
chip in.
well, it's a
Go ahead, Dave.
function of everything that's changed in the world as well. The fact that social media and the combining effect of all of these influencers and so on. And these cars, they're just so iconic. The shape is so fantastic. And now you can afford some of these luxuries that you dreamt about as a kid. And I mean, but the prices have gone crazy. And that's been more of about a 10-year thing, Tim. They really started moving up very quickly in around 2015. And all of a sudden, cars that you used to be able to buy for, $20,000, $25,000 have shot up so that you're going to pay 50, 60, $70,000 for the same car. And I just think that that's a function of the history that Porsche has embraced and is focused more on these air-cooled cars. The fact that these cars have sort of that soul and that there's enough of them and enough of a driving experience. That's the key, I think, Tim, that you're picking up on the younger people. These are cars that you still get in and drive. They're not pieces of art that you stick in and you roll out for cars and coffee, right? The guy with the muscle car, the Ford Mustang isn't taking that up into the mountains and
That's
ripping
the
around up in the mountains.
But what you're saying is what I didn't understand, because normally, Casey, think about this. Normally the peaks of car values, we can say use muscle cars as an example. Those cars were popular when the baby boomers were in high school or college or whatever, and those are the aspirational cars they wanted to have but they couldn't afford. So you could kind of predict where these bubbles are going to be in car values. At least you've been able to do that really since the 80s. Now this 9/11 thing, it doesn't make sense, because there was a bubble and it's kind of ran out, but now I sense, and you guys are living examples because you're selling these old cars that are older than the guys buying them in a lot of cases. But these cars are starting to build their own market that doesn't follow the normal trend. That's the thing that I just find from a business perspective is really fascinating. It's unusual.
You can follow what Dave said. I mean, you see the 356 market's kind of falling off at current, but the 911 market, I believe, is, for the majority of people that are enthusiasts now, is more significant. But I think the key term that Dave said was experience. There are people out there that push artisanal. They make French press coffee. They don't always go to Starbucks. I'm the kind of guy that has multiple record players and a ton of records in my house, because I'd rather walk over to the record player, put the record down, turn it on, clean it, set the weight on top of the record, and drop the needle. That's me. That's the experience that you get with driving an old car. It's not automated. It's not going on to Spotify and hitting a playlist and pushing go. There are times where that is a lot more convenient than doing what I just explained. But a lot of these people are looking for the experience. They're looking to be transported back in time. It's the same reason that people like mid-century modern houses. They don't retain heat. My house, you can barely air condition it in the middle of summer, but the aesthetics and the experience and being around it is what makes it all worth it. And I do believe that, I mean, I wasn't alive in the 50s when my house was built, nor was I 20 years old when it was during my formative years of architecture. But I love the fact that mid-century houses provide a real beautiful aesthetic and experience that they're not really replicating now.
You better not get me started talking about real estate, because that's how I made my living. So we better move back. All right. So I get your point. That is a valid point. Well, let's talk about automotive news that got your attention, and we don't have to talk about. There's a Porsche headline that came out. Everyone's talking about this, and I think this is very fascinating from a business perspective. The fact that the CEO came out straight up of Porsche and said our business model is broken. I mean, what does that mean? Dave, what does that mean to you when the CEO of Porsche says our business model is broken? What is he trying to express? Is he hedging because what's the logic behind that?
Well, they just made a bunch of bad choices, right? They made a bunch of mistakes. I'm not sure if that's what part is broken, but the part that is broken certainly is that they bet too heavily on the EV market. And they took certainly cars that didn't really need to move to EV, their best-selling car, the Macan, and now they've discontinued the Macan, but now they're trying to course correct and bring back an ICE version of that car. But they definitely blew it in several areas in terms of betting on the EV market, and now they're having to retool quickly because nobody seems to want those cars. I mean, Taycans are, they fall off the cliff immediately once they're sold. I think they're not quite on the cutting edge of the battery stuff quite yet as well. So they had issues there. And the Halo cars, I don't really know what percentage you can't really dissect that when you look at their financials, but I don't know if the Halo cars, the GT3 RSs, GT2 RSs, all those cars, if the 911 is really the thing that floats the boat. It's much more the Cayennes, Macans that drive the profits on that company. I think China just that was their biggest market right up until recently, and it's off 30 to 40%. I can't remember. I looked at something
That's
the other day, and it's off a
yeah.
lot. And so,
Well, and prices
yeah.
too, right? So the tariffs have driven up prices by 15%. And I'm wondering if they're trying to figure out. So I would think from Porsche's perspective, certainly on your more desirable cars, they wouldn't be sweating whether the consumer will pay the extra 15% because they have been on the
Right.
RS cars for a long damn time because you know what they sell for to the second buyer. But as far as the business model being broken, I think you're spot on about the electric aspect. Casey, since you used to work at a Porsche dealership, and used to sell Porsches. Do you have an opinion on this?
So, Dave, I will correct you slightly. Macan Ice has not been discontinued yet. It's still rolling out. They're still delivering cars. I just don't know. I don't believe they're currently planning on a next evolution of that car, which I think
So,
will be the opportunity for them to pivot.
wasn't the 2025 Macan going to be the last ICE one, or and they were going to all electric after that? I
I
heard they were
believe they're going
pivoting
to
to.
run, I believe they're running concurrently for a while before phasing it out because
So
I
you,
do
Okay.
know that that is a big, I believe that is the case. I mean, when I know that the mid-engine cars are nearly done, I believe that you can formally state that, but I
Yep.
do believe that Macan is still going to run concurrently. I don't know if they have announced for how long that is going to happen. My guess is that it's going to continue to happen for quite a while. As
I don't want to challenge Casey on his facts, Dave, but you do have the super secret website called Google that you could probably check all of this. I'm going to assume Casey's right, but you might want to fire that up. But I
I
do,
just read something. I read something about them doing, at making a hybrid version of that, and that would kind of be their play in terms of Macan as they evolved the car, and that they were rethinking that. I know for
I'd be
sure.
all about a hybrid Macan. I think
Yeah,
that would
and
be a
I
wonderful
think a lot
car.
of people would, right? I
Yeah.
think a lot of people would be into that car, but the all electric one, it's like what is it, $20,000 more than the standard car? Right? I mean, it's a lot. I mean, that's a big jump if you're moving from an entry level Macan that's in the 50s and you can't get into one until you're in the 70s. That's going to take a lot of people out of that market for sure.
Yeah,
So,
I have zero experience with the EV Macan. It arrived shortly after I departed, but I will tell you that the issue, as you have suggested, it's has nothing to do with two-door cars currently. It's all four-door cars, and the majority of it has to deal with China. And that then you're talking about geopolitics, you're talking about all these things that I know nothing about, and I can't formally form an opinion other than the fact that gasoline cars to me, current efficient gasoline cars seem to make a lot of sense. And I hope that they continue to develop that or pivot back to it.
so should we assume that they're going to do what Ferrari's done and they're going to start coming out with more, basically raise prices substantially on their most desirable cars and then come out with different iterations of their most desirable cars and even make those rare, limited edition and whatnot to try to make up margins? Is that a safe assumption that that's going to be their play?
I don't
I
think
don't
that they're
know.
going to do the zillion dollar, like $4 million one-off cars unless you're going to do one of those exclusive speedsters or a rebodied car like a Carrera GT or something like that. I mean, Ferrari does those SP3 things. I don't know that necessarily that Porsche is geared up to do those on a larger scale. Paul might be the guy to ask when he returns because I know that he did spend a lot of time at the exclusive department and he could probably speak more intelligently on it than I could.
I bet if
I
they're
just
going to
don't
have
know.
problems, if they're going to have problems selling the Macans, I wouldn't be surprised if Porsche comes out with their own Icona series. That's what you're referring to with the SP3 that Ferrari does. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know how they fix the China market, which is really the
They
issue. I
can't.
mean, they're
Yeah.
closing dealers over there. The cars, the halo of Porsche in China is not what it used to be. And some of this stuff, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you're seeing it on YouTube or TikTok or someplace else. Some of these Chinese cars, these Chinese electric cars, they're damn nice. They look great. No wonder we're trying to keep them out of the US, right? Because some of these
Ferrari
cars look pretty damn nice.
Ferrari bought a Chinese SUV and someone took a snapshot of it rolling in and out of the gates because they're evidently going to still try to make an all EV SUV and they're benchmarking against this Chinese car. How crazy is that?
That
I
is
mean,
crazy, right? But I mean,
Jim
they're making some.
Farley, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
Dave.
No, no,
Well,
you go ahead.
Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, like dailies random Chinese EVs, and he talks publicly about how great they are. I mean, that's the kind of effort that people need to put into this because they're able to create these cars at such an inexpensive amount. And they don't bring them in the United States because I don't want to get into that either, but it would be really bad for the rest of American car manufacturers if they did.
Well, they're tariffed. I don't remember what the percent that they're tariffed by, but
It's
it's a
a
lot.
it's a zillion dollars.
Yeah, I mean
Anyway,
they just started tariffing imported watches from Switzerland by what, 27 or
yeah,
28%?
I thought it was 35. Yeah.
Yeah, you might be right. Well, so let's loop this back in because there's always going to be a lot of questions about tariffs. So in the watch world, I got a message from Bob's Watches. I don't know if you guys ever been to that website. They're fantastic. Hey, you know what? Bob's Watches, if you'd like to sponsor this podcast, we're all in. So as far as far as that goes, in this little blurb, he was quoted as saying that the tariffs that were announced less than a week ago on Swiss made watches on new ones, it's already driving up prices on the resale watches like instantly. I haven't heard, and you guys will have a better feel on this than I, but I haven't heard whether that's actually happening with, later model new cars in general, if Porsche, since that's the focus. Do you guys see that happening? That the new cars are now, or the slightly used cars, maybe 5 years or less, are starting to increase in value because of the tariffs?
I don't think it's happened yet, but it's gonna, without a doubt, because I don't think we've really, really seen in all aspects of the economy the effects of these tariffs yet. It's still just kind of rolling in slowly. These guys, there's
I,
plenty of inventory on dealer floors, so some of these cars coming in, haven't been impacted yet. But I can absolutely can see that if the new car prices are going up, the used car prices follow absolutely
I
directly
can't
behind it.
I can't see how that's not true. And I also believe that that's also going to drive up even the modern classic values because the new car, like if a GT3 RS, there's one that's on BAT now. You'll appreciate that gray one with red wheels, and it sold in 2024 for, I think,
400.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, you know. So the guy evidently who bought it traded it in, and somebody else bought it from the dealership that he traded in, and now it's for sale again. It'll be very interesting to see if that car sells for more than what he paid for it or what it sold for a year ago. Do you guys have an opinion on that?
It's a non-Weissach car that's kind of in a weird color combination. When that car first sold, it blew my mind how much it went for. I can't imagine it's going to go that much again.
I am actually agreeing with you. And it sold at the dealer for what the guy paid for it off bat, by the way. At least that was the list price.
Ugh, yuck. No good, no good. Gotta get it at MSRP.
Well,
Yeah,
let's watch that so we can talk about that because I know a lot of listeners are very attentive to that. Maybe we'll see some of that after the Monterey Car Week, which is, by the way, the answer of what I'm doing in cars is Julie and I are planning. We're leaving on a Saturday for Monterey Car Week. I didn't answer that question from the top of it, so we'll be reporting live from Monterey Car Week the best we can, with our awkward camera angles and our lack of finesse with understanding how to make everything work. But it'll be fun. We had a question, and this was again from maybe 2 weeks ago, and I wrote this down. And I don't know if you guys may have answered this last week when I wasn't on the show, but with regards to the failing PDK transmissions, did you guys get to that?
Oh, we didn't. We touched on it a little bit, and then I indicated that I was going to, offer some additional feedback here on where you can get these PDK transmissions fixed for less, for not having to replace the entire transmission, which is
And
really what's going on. There's a couple of
so
sensors.
well, let's talk about that. And then Casey, get ready because what we're going to do next after he explains this was a listener question. And like I said, we're trying to integrate these opposed to having listener questions at the end. We're then going to roll into the 997 buyer's guide. Now, there are a lot of notes with this. Casey spent a lot of time on this. And the notes for the buyer's guide are going to be in the show description. So if you want the complete notes, just scroll down. They're going to be right there. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, no worries. Just in terms of PDK, there's a couple of bits that fail on these cars that will ultimately fail on all of them, likely. There's a sensor, a position sensor that tends to fail on the car, which throws the PDK into a limp mode home, kind of in the gear that you may be in or in third gear. I don't know which, but the sensor is basically a magnetic position sensor that goes inside the transmission. and can be replaced reasonably easy if you're willing to crack the transmission. I think most dealers are basically just going to try to sell you a rebuilt transmission that might cost you $20,000, $25,000 in a PDK car, which is a lot of money. And I'm reasonably sure, and maybe next week I'll have permission, because I've been communicating back and forth with a gentleman's business. It's in a rural part of Tennessee. All he does is fix PDK transmissions, and I wanted to get his permission before I gave his
Let
name
him.
out, feeling that he
Yeah.
would get buried with incoming inquiries on fixing PDK transmissions. But the thing that goes wrong with most of these cars is a reasonably straightforward fix. Porsche doesn't sell the replacement part for this sensor, but it can be acquired elsewhere. And then an aftermarket or an independent like this gentleman's shop in Tennessee can do the installation for a fraction of the cost, probably less than $5,000 or $6,000.
That's pretty incredible. All right, so let's move on. Casey, let's talk about 997s. And again, this is because a lot of folks were asking about this. And then we're going to get into, I think, discussing if essentially the different variants and maybe one version over the other and all the rest of it. But Casey, the floor is yours. And Casey, you did give me permission if you start to go down the mental rabbit hole of extra detail to interrupt you. So listeners, if you think I'm being rude, Casey asked prior to me hitting record to interrupt him if he all of a sudden starts to really he goes from nerd to super nerd. All of us do, right? That's the reason we have so much passion for this. But yes, so please don't think me of rude if I have to jump in and get him back on his incredible outline, which again is available in the show notes. Go ahead, Casey.
Not a problem. So I will draw your attention to the photo behind me. This is a 2005 997 launch car. This is a 997S. In the fall of 2004, the dealership that I was working at that would not let me drive an R32 allowed me to borrow that car for a weekend at 22 years old and drive it to a local Concours that was in the Canton, Ohio area. So the first weekend that this car existed, I had the opportunity to drive it around as a 22-year-old kid, which was, to me, was mind-blowing. So in basically the big change that happened between 996 and 997, a lot of the underpinnings are the same, but a lot of the bodywork changed. The front fenders, of course, the rear bumper, the headlights being the key factor. And I believe that is really what makes a 997 worth so much more than a 996, because it does look like a 911. They got away from that for a little bit. It's not to say 996s are not aesthetically attractive cars. I'm actually working on a couple listings for Bring a Trailer right now, and a little bit of a restoration project as well, like Dave helped me with on the interior before. But the 997 came out as a 2005 model year car in the United States as a two-wheel drive car. They came in Carrera, Carrera S, and then the Cabriolet versions as such. The other launch car that most dealerships received was a gray 997 base car. I will change my photo here again to the 2005 997 that I owned. You will see in this picture behind me that I changed the wheels out because Carrera XRR Sport wheels are by far the best looking 997 wheel. I owned that car for a couple of months. I had to get rid of it because I had to get surgery on my left foot, which kept me from being able to drive manual transmission cars. So I'll leave that up there now. So 2006 was the first year. They came with 3.6 liters in the base car and 3.8 liters in the S car, 325 and 355 horsepower respectively. In 2006, they introduced the all-wheel drive versions of the cars. So it was a Carrera 4 or in Carrera 4S. In 2007, they introduced the Targa models. You'll see a bunch of red 911 Targas from 2007 with black interior, and they all had turbo design wheels from a 997 turbo. Those cars were the dealer launch cars. So every dealership got one of those. So you'll see a couple hundred of those in the market. So if those pop up, don't be surprised. And then in 2000, we'll get to turbos later. And then in 2008, that was the last year for the first generation 997. Now, compared to a 996, The interiors were significantly different. Some people like 996 interiors, some people like 997 interiors. 997s did encounter some problems similar to Ferraris, where some of the buttons get sticky on the inside, but thankfully with Porsche, they sell new buttons that are easy to swap out, or there are some aftermarket companies that do that as well. But honestly, the 997 first generation was a carryover of the 996. You had the M96, M97 engine that evolved from the 3.4 to 3.6 liter in the 996, and then the 997 got 3.6 and 3.8 liter engines. The 2005 cars, some of them, it's hard to really determine which ones uh, had the type of M96 engine where you were able to easily remove the IMS bearing. And as I've talked about on here before, I've only seen a few IMS bearings fail in my history, but when we were talking about listing cars on Bring a Trailer, if you're listing a 996 or a 997 that can have a car that can have the IMS bearing removed and it does not, you might as well not even list it on Bring a Trailer. Dave's giving me the thumbs down right now.
Well, just for the record, I mean, just to interject, are we on, by the way, are we in segment 2? You're going really fast, which is great.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think we're just covering.
So you're not even looking at your notes. This is just top of mind.
This is top of mind.
Dude.
I'm
You're
sorry.
like Porsche Rain Man. It's awesome. I love it. Dave, your to replace an IMS bearing, how much does that cost in your shop?
Well, typically around $3,000. Bearing
Okay.
itself is a little under $1,000.
And I heard that the percent of cars that actually need the IMS bearing replaced is like, it's not that many. So it's one of these great urban myths. Am I understanding that correctly? Casey, do you have any info?
It's a, like I said, I've only seen a few fail. But
yeah, that's the thing.
There's a whole lot of scare tactics in marketing, but we'll get to later why the 997 second generation is so much more expensive. But we'll get there when we get there.
Okay. And I do have a bunch of questions on 997s that I've gathered from Paul, as well as listeners as well. So keep going and make sure we leave some time for that.
Got it. So that's basically what you're looking at with naturally aspirated normal 911s. A car that I really love in that vein is the 2008 Carrera S. So you look at the things like the IMS bearings and all that stuff. It's the most evolved version of the M97 engine right before they did away with it. So that is a car that I consider to be pretty safe. And it also, the 997 first generation cars had a longer stroke motor, so they have more torque. So you are going to get a little bit more drivable revs through the middle. If you like revving cars up, we'll get to that here in a minute. Do you want me to go into 911 turbo information as well, Tim, or do you want me to keep it as just Carreras?
No, let's do 911, the 997 turbo too, but there was something you skipped, or maybe I just wasn't listening close enough. Triptronic, PDK, that was in your notes? I'm sure that's
for sure. The 997 first gen came with Tiptronic transmission as the automatic variety. It was a 5-speed automatic transmission that didn't shift very well, and there are very few of them in the market. I will pivot this to turbos, because when the turbo came out in 2007, the turbo with Tiptronic transmission, which was the first, well, actually I take that back. I think they offered them in 996, but in 997, they made a big deal of it because the 997 turbo with an automatic was faster to 60 miles an hour than the stick through brake boosting and the overspeed feature of the Sport Chrono button. So you will see a lot of 2007 turbos ordered with Tiptronic transmissions. The turbo continued as a first generation car through 2007. The turbo cab was added in 2008. And in 2009, they kind of did a hybrid model, which was, they call it, I guess, a 997 Gen, like maybe 0.5. And what that was it looked like a later car, and it had the touchscreen navigation system that was in the 2010 and later turbo, but it still had the Metzger split case twin turbo motor that started with the 911 GT1 and was in the 996 as well. So 2007 was the normal turbo. 2008, they added the Cabriolet. 2009 was cab and coupe with that slightly augmented interior of the car as well, which I find is to be a really good sweet spot for the turbo era.
So
Tim, do
talk
you have any
about the
questions?
yeah, DFI, the direct fuel injection, that came about and what year and what they didn't. So talk about that and as far as what that affect values and whatnot. Engine changes, M96, M97 versus DFI direct fuel injection, 9A1. This is the shorter stroke motors that came in the point twos.
Yes. So in 2009, that was a huge change for Porsche. When it came to 911, they used the M96, M97 engines for a long time. Um, the 9A1 motor, which debuted in the 2009 911s, is really a very similar version of the engine that Porsche still currently produces. The biggest thing about it is that it was basically 40% less moving parts as compared to an M96, M97 engine. They did away with the intermediate shaft, so it took away the people's fear of that. They changed the stroke, so it's actually a shorter stroke motor, so it revs higher. But the other big thing for emissions and fuel efficiency was they went from traditional manifold injection to direct fuel injection. That was huge for the era. So that's the biggest change in the car. Aesthetically, they changed the headlights, they changed the taillights, they changed the bumper. And as I mentioned earlier, they also put in touchscreen navigation systems in the 2009 and later cars, which made a really, really big difference in terms of interior usability. It was also the first 911 to offer Bluetooth. And they also had a universal audio interface that you could plug in one of those really wide pin iPods back in the day as well. So that made a pretty big difference and made the cars a lot more appealing. They changed the blinkers and the taillights to be LED, so it really modernized the car as well. Those
Well,
cars, go ahead.
no, I was going to say the 997 is nice. I mean, just from a buyer's perspective, because like the 996, it's actually physically smaller. It's sort of like the last little hanger-oner of the modern, of the classic shape. And so a lot of the 997s, but in the next segment you wrote here is what 997 is right for you. And we're going to talk about values. Do you guys both think the 997s in the marketplace right now, this is, I think Paul thinks this, are undervalued comparison? Maybe 996s and 997s are undervalued compared to 991s. Do you think that price difference is justified?
I do. I think the 991 is still a better car. I just happen to like the car. I like the styling of the car better. I think that, and it's a little closer to the current cars, which is what I think holds that difference in price. I mean, 997 is a fantastic car. Obviously, it's a little bit more analog. It's not quite so as the it's one of those transition cars where people say, I want that slightly analog feel, so let me get one of these. All the buzz around the Metzger engine, certainly in the dot twos. So, um, I think it's a car that seems to be in its hotness right now. Casey, don't you agree? I mean, as far as what people seem to want.
So there are a number of different ways to look at it. As far as the size of the car, it is a smaller vehicle. It's only about the 991 is only about an inch and a half or 2 inches longer, but they significantly increased wheelbase, so that made the car feel a lot bigger. But I enjoy a smaller car. To me, I look at 997 as kind of like a 964, meaning like it looks like a 911, but it's a lot easier to use than prior generations. Things like you compare a G body to I mean, I still don't know how the HVAC controls work in like an 87 911. I mean, like, come on, give me a break.
Dave doesn't either. Hey,
I
Dave,
don't either, right?
since you
I'm
work,
futzing with one last night trying to make it get my defroster to work.
he's probably got 100 of these damn things that he's working on. Let's try to quiz him on that. He doesn't know.
That'll be a whole episode on the podcast right there.
And by the way, we've hired him to put air conditioning in our 72 911. So, anyway. Well, but Casey, as far as best value today, that was in your notes. So let's just dig right in and talk about where you guys think the values are of these things. And if someone was in the market to spend, give us a range.
So you have to look at when it comes to sales, I'm sure it's the exact same in real estate, Tim. you try to remove all of the issues that somebody would have from buying a car or a house, right? Let's say if you added a garage, that would give more people the opportunity to want to buy that house because more people want garages. The DFI cars, so the 2009 and later cars, are always going to be more expensive. Twofold. One thing I didn't touch on, which I've touched on before, is that they made more versions of the cars. They made rarer versions of the cars that I didn't even get into, like GTS models with center lock wheels. But if you take away the fear of the engine blowing up and costing you $30,000 or stuffing an LS into it, that gives people more of a peace of mind to feel comfortable with owning and buying that car in perpetuity. You look at the fact that they added PDK in the 2009 and later cars, which was immensely better. The early PDKs were a little herky jerky when they were cold, but through software updates they got better. But you really have to look at the fact that if you have a really good automatic transmission in a really good car, that makes it more widely available to more people. The other thing that causes those second gen cars is that if you remember back in 2009 to 2012, that was a really bad time for the United States economy. And that was the beginning of when Porsche started sending cars to other countries. 2007, so that was 2 years after 997 was introduced, was the highest volume 997 sale year up until like 2018. So they were selling a ton of 911s back in the day. So if you look at those reasons, I mentioned earlier, a 2008 911 is a first generation car. It is probably the most reliable of all of those cars. That was Porsche put all of the fixes with the dual row bearings and all the things in it. And I didn't even touch on bore scoring, but I think that's a topic that we need to have another day. But at the end of the day, when it comes to buying one of these cars, I think a 997 second generation car is a money in, money out situation with the possibility that it is going to grow
So,
in.
so, so for us non-car nerds or not in the business, you're saying basically you won't lose any money on it. You'll buy it, you'll drive it, enjoy it, and then maybe at least break even.
I think even with the cost of maintenance as time goes on, as long as you're not doubling the miles in the car, I believe that it's a safe place to put your money. This is not investment advice. I am not a professional when it comes to that, but I will tell you that personally, if I wanted a car that I could buy, drive for a couple of years, enjoy, and not have to dump a ton of money in, 997 second generation would be where I'd put my money.
That's a good way of wrapping that one. So let's talk about bore scoring. Let's mention what. So Dave, are you comfortable talking about that, or do you want to pull in one of your mechanics?
Yeah, I probably would, but I mean, obviously the concept being that if you've not maintained these cars particularly well, Casey, I'm not sure what the coating is on the
It's
cylinder
you?
walls. Is it
it's
Nickel?
so basically, well, it's not Nikasil. So the Porsche I mean, manufacturers of most modern vehicles put a metal coating on the inside or a silicone coating on the inside of cylinder walls that basically makes them more slippery. If I'm not mistaken, the M96, M97 engines use Alusil. Um, Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but there is aftermarket manufacturers such as LN that they use Nikasil, which is, I guess, over the course of time, that is something in metallurgy that does a better job with keeping bore scoring away. But as Dave says, the majority of the cars that I've seen with these bore scoring issues are not regularly taken care of the way that they should, or they use very long-term, what's the mileage?
Interval, long interval
Intervals, yeah,
oils and
for
whatnot.
oil
Yeah.
changes. So I would really recommend, as I've stated before, you're really buying the prior owner of these cars. And if I were buying one of these cars for myself, as I've explained earlier, a thorough pre-purchase inspection, looking for things like bore scoring to give you that peace of mind. Or let's say if it does have bore scoring, that gives you a negotiation point. but that is something that was prevalent in 996 and 997 cars that also does not happen with the second generation car, which makes them more valuable.
So how do you know if you have bore scoring? How do you know if that's a problem? And
You
you're in a
pull
car.
out,
Yeah, go ahead, Casey. You keep going. You're doing
you
great.
pull out a plug, and you pull out all the plugs, and you put what is called a bore scope in, which is a very small camera like they do to you at the doctor, Tim, and they stick it in the hole and they
What do you
look
mean
around
me?
there.
You
Maybe
don't.
Dave. I'm
No.
not there
So,
yet.
so
I think I'm still like 2 years away from that. But
that's right.
anyway,
45, brother. That's when you're
yeah.
supposed to start doing it.
So I'm not there yet. So, but they put a camera in the hole and then they spin it
Whoa.
around in the hole to see if there is striping that goes up and down where the piston would travel
That's
in the cylinder
just like
bore.
having a colonoscopy. Same thing.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Only
exactly.
without the polyps. No polyps there. But to get to the kind of, I had to explain this to my wife the other day. So let me see if I can try to use that sort of language for people that don't understand what this really is. It's the idea that this piston's going up and down inside the cylinder, and it's creating little grooves in the cylinder. It's scoring the cylinder wall as the piston's moving up and down. And as a result of that, by putting these scratches in the cylinder wall, the car is going to consume oil. You're going to see smoke. In some cases, when it gets really bad, I've only seen one, honestly, that had serious bore scoring, and it was actually, I think it was a Cayman that had it. And it'll start to make a sort of slapping sound. It makes a rattling, slapping sound if it's gotten very bad,
Yeah,
because
that's a really bad one.
there's actual movement inside the piston as the piston is traveling through the cylinder.
You mean,
And
what do you mean
that's
by
that,
movement? What do you mean by movement? You
like
do it
at
with
the
your hand.
bottom end of the piston. Imagine this is
Oh,
the
wow.
piston going up and down, and so you're getting like a slapping, and it's not a lot. I mean, we're talking about fractional millimeters enough, but enough to make a mechanical noise in the car. And if you're at that point, that motor's gone. It needs to be re-sleeved at that point. So, but bore scoring is much more of an oil consumption, smoke, but it is really all about that maintenance. If you've done good oil changes and kept up with the maintenance and haven't, beaten the hell out of the car, as Casey was saying, right? It's about the owner that you're really buying. So you got to know if this thing has had good maintenance along the way to avoid that. But putting the
So,
scope in there means popping out a spark plug. It probably adds an hour and a half to the time on a PPI to do that and get good images and so on to do it. But we do that here at Sunderworks all the time on PPIs.
so the questions we're going to be answering, I do think cover a lot of the pricing trends and whatnot. So if you guys are cool with it, we can skip the next couple segments. If you are wanting to read all of Casey's great notes, because remember, Casey is, what's your official title at the PCA? Global International Interstellar Porsche 997 expert.
I'm the guy that can ramble probably more than either of you about 997s on a podcast. I think that's pretty much what my title is.
They give him a grand poobah helmet with horns on the
I've
side
got
of it
that
as
hat
well.
yeah. But the other thing I wanted to point out is like we were talking about with the guy that drops the needle that likes that old car feel. The 997 is the last Porsche 911 that has hydraulic steering. And say what you want about electromechanical steering, you know, there's something pretty amazing about hydraulic steering or not having power steering at all, where you can really feel everything that's happening in the front of the car. It's not effectively synthesized or programmed. And that is a big point in the feel of these cars, and why I believe that it is the most cost-effective way. As I mean, as a 964 owner, and Dave, I know that you've got a bunch of air-cooled cars too. Keeping up on a 997 as far as maintenance is pennies on the dollar what an air-cooled car is. Most air-cooled cars.
Yep.
So getting that analog feel and still having a water-cooled car with functional air conditioning and a really good functional radio and a good seating position with safety features like airbags and anti-lock brakes and all those things, that really, I think, is another key point that is going to continue driving up 997s, because it looks like a 911.
And you're going to find a lot more people that can work on them because they haven't all retired. So that's going to be the other big thing. Well, you guys mentioned something about steering feel, and I hear people ramble on about steering feel until the cows come home, and then you ask them what they're comparing steering feel. It's always it's very rare that you come across anyone that's actually driven a car with manual steering, let alone basically, not over boosted power steering. They're comparing essentially a synthesized version, electric steering versus electric steering. They don't really know what they're talking about, is what I'm trying to express, or they don't know what they're missing by not having driven a 997. So which one of you guys, this would be a good poll question, which one of you would like to describe why steering feel matters and what the differences are between driving an older car, say, for example, one of Dave's cars, versus, say, for example, even a 992 one or two GT3 RS? Like, both of them have great steering feel. Why would one prefer the older car over the newer car? Whichever one of you guys want to jump on that. Steering feel only.
Well, Casey, you've owned both. You got a 964. Obviously, it's got power steering, and you've had a 997. I've not owned a 997. So compare those two cars first, and then I'll chime in with kind of the air-cooled, like zero, just plain old rack and pinion manual steering.
Well, they're very similar, and a lot of the 964s that I look after, like RS Americas and Carrera RSs, they don't have power steering. So you're in that same vein where, like, I'm not a big fan of heavy cars without power steering, and I consider 964s to be heavy cars. You go back to something like a early 70s 911, which I think is like a 73 RS or a 74 Carrera. I don't think there is better steering in the world than that car.
But Casey, let's drill down for folks that don't understand what the difference is, because there is a huge difference in. So the steering, what I'm trying to get at is the super analytical response to what it feels like when you're driving, like what you just mentioned, a non-power steering, early 70s car with manual steering. It's the feel of the road. It's not just the bumps and the nuances in the pavement. It's knowing what the front end of the car is going to do so you can actually drive it more precisely. That's what people are missing because they've never driven one of these older cars.
I always likened it to seeing a guitar player that really knows what they're doing. And you feel that you can see them working an instrument. With a car with either no power steering or hydraulic power steering, the nuance that comes through the front of the car that's translated to your hands is to me what makes driving special. When 992 came out, when they first went to electric power steering, it was really great. However, it didn't hold a candle to what was in the 997, which I do believe, and it's very hard to put subjective feeling into words, but it's just, boy, how would I phrase this?
So there's a great video of Senna. You guys, I know you've seen this, Casey, driving. I think it's at Monaco, and it's like you know what I'm talking about, where he's setting, his hands are constantly going like this.
Yep.
And then if you watch guys drive the modern Formula One cars, it's like, whereas the old cars are constantly making adjustments and everything. That's, I think, better way of, maybe without actually feeling it, maybe how to understand it.
Yeah, it's feeling, as you mentioned, it's feeling being able to tell what the front of the car is doing. And when you make it like, let's say you're sitting on your hand, right? And your hand goes numb and you're trying to type on your phone or something like that. It makes it difficult. But it takes away that ability for you to feel the tips of your fingers and exactly what you're doing.
You just peaked. We cannot do better at explaining than that. You just won the further. Use that.
I want you to stop sitting on your hands, though, Casey. Stop sitting on your hands.
We cannot do it. We cannot give a better explanation than what Casey just came up out of the top of his head. That is peaking, trying to explain steering feel. Fantastic job. All right, let's go to Paul's 997 buyer questions, and you guys we can play around with this. And these are some of these questions came from Paul's Instagram. Is a 997.2 worth the 50% value drop? He was not here to explain what he meant, but hopefully we can figure it out.
I'm assuming he means 50% more above the cost of a normal 997.
I would assume as well. Yes. So what do you think, Dave?
50. Well, I want to make sure I understand that, because the difference in you're saying difference in cost between the .1 and .2.
I don't know. Paul is not here to defend himself and his jiggity jaggedy notes that he put it in the spreadsheet.
Well, there's normally about a $20,000 difference, between these two cars. I think the average current price on the dot one is in the low 50s versus the dot two, which is running probably in the mid 60s, mid to high 60s in terms of current values on the dot twos. So I would say yes, that it's worth the premium. I definitely would say yes, worth the premium. I'm not sure if that's what Paul meant, but the difference in that, just from the getting rid of the M96 and 97 motor, just all of the baggage that goes along with that first gen, the Metzger motors, it's just, it's iconic. So yes, I would say it's worth that money.
This is another one of Paul's, a 997.1S is nearly the same power of a 997.2 base. Boy, I miss Paul. He has so much of this little precise information in these questions. Paul, get better. So get your butt back on our show. All right. So
they drive a lot different. As I mentioned earlier, the base, so you have the horsepower output's similar. The base second gen car is 345. The original S car was 355. But of course, you have the different stroke engine, and you also have the fact that it's a 3.8 liter of the first S versus the base version of the second generation car. So the power band is going to be significantly different. And as far as like, I love everything about the 997. And I remember when they came out, the second gen cars, is I missed the noise of the first generation car because it did sound more guttural. And I also missed the torque, and that did go away with the second gen car. But it is worth a lot more money because, like we said earlier, it reduces the second gen's worth more than the first because it reduces the issues that you're going to have in the future, be it mentally or, hypothetically. And I think a lot of buyers buy that. They want convenience. They want ease. They don't want that, possibility of a $25,000 engine blowing up in the back of the car, even though it may or may not happen.
That's the key point that you're making right there too. It's the mental thing. It's that idea of, do I have a time bomb ticking behind me? And it takes some of that enjoyment away, right?
And
If you don't
it
think
did
you've
for
got a
me
problem with the
too.
motor.
My '05, I had to get rid of it because of health issues, but I will tell you that I did think about that. And because I could afford the car, I mean, for what it's worth, it was a two owner car with 36,000 miles that I bought for $24,000. I bought it for nothing, and I made an agreement with the dealership that I would sell it back to them for what I had in it. And I put brand new Bilstein suspension on it and went through the car and so I was probably in it for the low 30s, but I remember when we traded that car back in, I sold it in the 40s. But the thing about it is that was always in the back of my head that something could happen, and I couldn't afford to fix it if it did.
There is, and we've talked about this, Paul and I have on the show before, about why a Porsche 911 is so unique in the marketplace. I'm kind of bouncing around, but we're going to get to the next Paul question here in a second. But it is really fascinating. It's because I do have a lot of interest in different types of cars, and you guys are definitely more focused than I am. Paul, I mean, come on now, that boy needs to go to some sort of 911 recovery program. But I have found myself over the last 7 months of doing this podcast falling more and more in love with 911s, and we have two of them. And it's simply because they are truly unique vehicles. They're unique in that the engine in the back creates a certain experience driving the car, whether it's a newer one, though frankly, I think on the 992s, it's been mostly engineered out. Now those cars feel mostly like GT cars to me. But it is really incredible that now a lot of you are 911 enthusiasts that are watching or listening, but if you're not, if you're intrigued by what we're talking about, go drive a 997, because if you're listening to what Casey's saying, it really does encapsulate a lot of what people love about the older cars without having to suffer, a lot of the expense, frankly, that the older cars will always impose upon you. So the 997, but Porsches in general, 911 specifically, there are no competitors in the marketplace. And that's really, if you kind of think about it from a different perspective, you can say, well, price range wise or prestige wise or brand wise, all the rest of it. But as far as engineering wise, as far as the feel of having that engine behind you, as far as the lightness of the steering, that's unique to only 911. It's never really had a true competitor other than, of course, Dave's favorite car, the Corvair.
Oh, and absolutely. My favorite for sure. Ralph Nader and I.
Yeah, exactly. There was an amazing Corvair at the hill climb we accidentally stumbled across when we were driving around through Tail of the Dragon. We came across this actual SCCA hill climb, and man, the cars that these guys come up with in North Carolina to drive hill climbs, it is old school hot rod craziness. One of the fastest ones was a Mark One Miata that some dude had stripped down to what just had to look like some sort of, crazy Mad Max thing. And he dropped an LS motor in it. So here it is. You looked at it. What the hell is that? All the panels were cut off. No trunk, no nothing, no hood, big ass engine. And then you have to look at it and realize that it was originally born a Miata. I just thought that
So
was
was that part of the hillbilly road trip there that you hit that stumbled
No,
on that?
this was something we did just rando. We just drive. No, when you're in North Carolina and really any part in that country, in that part of the country, every road is an incredible driving road. There are no boring roads. Even the interstates in that part of the world are spectacular. And just the people have road lane discipline. The roads are beautiful. The landscape is beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back. Now, if the 997.2 GTS, all that it's cracked up to be, or should one get a 997 or a .2 turbo? This is a Paul question.
So I'll talk about, I didn't really get into GTS because honestly, we could spend 3 hours on it,
When you say
completely broken down.
when you say we, Casey, you mean you?
Well, if Paul were here, it would have been a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But so then the GTS version only appeared in the second generation of the car. But one thing I did not speak of is that basically the GTS was an option package, which was X51, which was naturally aspirated power kit. It was also available on the earlier cars, but in the later car, the second generation car, they offered the GTS, which was inclusive of that power kit. So you could get them in 2 or 4-wheel drive. If I'm not mistaken, they were all wide body cars. They were not narrow body, and they had a 408 horsepower engine, which was almost as much horsepower as the first generation GT3, which I didn't even touch on in this. I think it maybe
Well,
a 997 GT3 buyer's guide might be next time.
so that is the same turbo as a 990, or same power as a 996 turbo as well. And that would have been, so if you got so you're saying you could get a 997.2 GTS with 400 horsepower wide body, and that'd also be a manual transmission too, right? You could get manuals on those, I'm sure.
Yes, you could. Let me double check my
Wow.
horsepower numbers on this. Yeah,
You're
X51
right.
power kit with the first one was 381 and with the second one was 408. And probably
Yeah.
that engine probably had more torque than the GT3 as well. I mean, if you're not going the GT3 route or the turbo route, for a Carrera GTS, it is peak. They go for huge numbers now. Really nice cars
Why?
because well, look at it like this. A second generation 997 GT3 is 200 grand, 225. If it's got stories, 175. Okay. So if you want something that's nearly that good and a lot more approachable that you could get for 130 or 135, that's also a lot more livable with rear seats. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes, and they didn't make many of them. I think I only sold
This
4
is
or 5 in period.
This is Paul's next question, actually. You're teeing it up perfectly, Casey, as you always do. So this is Paul's quote. He wouldn't have normally read this, but I'll read it. He said, regardless of what I say or think, they will always have value, law of scarcity. So then I think this is supposed to be a question. Is it a 997, a modern day G50 Carrera, or like a 964? So maybe he's trying to figure, like, position all these to say which one would be more desirable and why.
I think it's more like a 964 because it's more rare. They
Well, how
made a
many?
lot. They made a lot of 80s Carreras.
Yeah, that's an understatement. But so what, again, this is, I think, a really great point from Paul. How many 997s did they make? How rare are these things?
I'll Google it. Stand by.
Oh, I found a question he didn't know the answer to. Damn. I thought
I
you
don't
were
know
the
manufacturing reasons.
international interstellar expert on 997s.
According
It's all
to
it's all the
Google,
model variants and all those things, Tim. There's a
according to
lot of these cars.
according to Google, 213,997s were built.
That seems like a lot. That is a lot.
Hmm.
But that's across all
But
generations, right?
that's from
So that's
2005,
five to
2004 to 2013.
yeah.
How many? uh,
You know,
Carrera
but to think about how incredible that
3 point.
is, that many cars, and they still are average pricing for a point one is 50 grand. Average price for a point two is 66 grand. That's incredible. How much of those cars, Casey, you were selling these things new? How much were these things new?
It's funny. I was talking to an old client the other day, my buddy Mike that owns TPC Racing, and I ordered one for him in 2009. And I think I gave him a couple of grand off when he ordered it. And it was a Carrera S that was white over black with sports seats and like XR wheels. And I think it was 76 grand.
It's just awesome if you think
You
about
can
that.
get that now for it or more, probably, right?
That car now, golly, that's probably, I mean, depending on miles and condition, that's probably $90,000 car.
Yeah, Jesus.
Can you guys think of another car that is mass produced, not rare, but is expensive? Can you think of another car that's mass produced, in other words, not rare, but is expensive? Like this kind of expensive, relatively speaking, holding its value. I
Acura
Yeah,
can't.
I
NSX,
think that
maybe.
you could say NSX, you could say some versions of naturally aspirated, interesting M3s.
Well, that's true.
Really, really nice E46 M3s, E90, E92 M3s. I believe the ones that aren't destroyed really do a great job holding the value. And I don't think it's any different than these cars. I mean, but if you look at those cars, unfortunately, with every version of M3, there was an issue. Like there was Vanos and E46 and rod bearings, and in E90, E92, there was rod bearings. But with the second generation 997, other than a possible PDK issue if you get it. Oh, the other thing that I forgot to add is that second generation 997s was the only, I believe, other than like in 996, I think it was only GT3s, turbos, and the 2004 40th anniversary. But 2009 through 2012 Carreras, that was the only time you can get a normal 911 with an optional limited slip diff. I mean,
That's interesting.
they didn't
Hmm.
offer it in the first generation of the car, other than GT cars.
So a lot of
Oh,
the things,
and GT cars and turbos. I apologize.
so a lot of the things that you guys have said that make some of the most interesting 997s or 996s or any of these are what would be an equivalent of a modern 911? Would it be the T?
Yeah,
I think so too. I
Yep.
think of all the modern cars that they're making right now, the T is going to be the most special one long term. I don't
yeah.
really.
But a T is 170 grand. I mean, how
Yeah,
much is a T? That's a
yeah,
ton of
that's right.
money. And how much more enjoyment do you have? I mean, I would rather have like the Carrera that I helped my buddy buy, was in the 70s. It was a really well sorted car in a cool color without stories with a limited slip and good seats. And I mean, is a T worth $100,000 more than that?
There's a lot of
Well,
questions like that.
we got to be thankful that somebody's buying them. Thank goodness, because otherwise they wouldn't be out there down the
There, I
road for
mean,
us to
but
buy
they're,
on the aftermarket,
yeah,
used market.
I mean, people, they go crazy for I mean, two-door Porsches, I don't believe, unless something dramatic happens, that it will be impacted at least in the next couple of years. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll all be sold.
Well, and this goes back to a point we had previously on the show is what will be the thing that, well-heeled enthusiasts will want in the future? Are they going to want the more simplistic analog steering, smaller, more visceral type experiences? Or are they going to want their 911s to become more bloated like the 992 is? And I had a 992 Touring and I sold it because I like the 991.2 Touring way better. So it is fascinating to me that we're seeing the values of these older cars being inflated, or I would say doing far better than maybe any market curve would tell you. And I think it is because of people wanting that more visceral experience. And I hope the manufacturers are waking up to the reality. And again, I made this point a couple of weeks ago, but I really thought about it afterwards. Is the simple fact that so many people are willing to pay so much freaking money. Dave's in business from fools like me, spending shit tons of money trying to basically make these old cars, like keeping them on the road and sort of modernizing them. I mean, the manufacturers, Porsche in particular, has to be looking at this and say, you know what? Maybe we should come up with more of a 911T, but even scale it back even further. I hope that's, I don't know how many people would buy it, honestly. I might be completely off base, but I bet I'm not. because pricing is getting insane. Truly, I think it's ridiculous. And it's not just because there's so many things, inflation and all these other types of things, tariffs that have caused prices to go so high. But it does seem to me like the demand for enthusiasts are proving it out. The demand for, I think, real enthusiast type cars are going to really play out. Do you guys want to go on to the next segment? Or you want to hold it off for the next show?
Well, I wanted to make one quick point. When it comes to old cars like this, like they're not building more.
Yep.
There's a finite amount. It's not like, you can get nerdy and you can say, I want a steel Rolex Daytona, right? They still make steel Rolex Daytonas. They'll continue to make steel Rolex Daytonas. It's that they didn't, I mean, you might find that, oh, it's got this caliber and this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's a Rolex Daytona. But those people might still argue with me about saying that they still continue to make 911s. But if you look at like the car behind me, like this was the first 911 that I ever, this is the first 911 that I ever ordered for a customer. I think it was a C4S with an aero kit and speed yellow. It's a beautiful car. They don't make anything like that anymore. They don't make this car that will just tickle every single amount of your senses. And this was really the end of that. I mean, when 991 came out, so many changes happened. They put the 7-speed manual transmission in the car, which was really vague. You had to reach around looking for gears. There was huge throw. It wasn't like that in these 997s. It was a different car. And
So
I
that
think
is the
that's,
reason, but that's the reason you're the interstellar expert according to PCA on 997s.
oh
And,
boy.
and so we're going to have to get him a hat. So Dave, when you're ordering swag, so yes, we're going to be getting some swag. Turns out our friend Dave, despite the fact that of what he's wearing, has quite a fashion and design sense. Oh, and so we're going to be coming out with t-shirts. We're going to be coming out with stickers. Oh, and there's the interior that he chose too. So you go with what you guys are.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
All right. So
That's
do you guys want
high design, Tim, is what we're all about here. So we're working on the swag program right now.
right?
Absolutely.
Do you guys want to hold off this next segment until the following week, or do you want to do it
No, I
now?
think we should. I think we should.
I,
We've probably been an hour and 15 right now, right? Something like that.
Yeah, Kate, do you want this is a three-way vote. So do you guys want to hold off or go on? Dave's
I
a
think
hold
we,
off.
I think I wanted to, if we hold off, I did want to make one quick listener shout out kind of thing.
Yeah, please.
And I didn't cover this in news, but once again, everybody, when it comes to these 997s, and I've referenced him before, Nathan Mers, who is he's a PCA guy, does great videos with Porsche Club of America. He has super in-depth 997 buyer's guides on his YouTube channel. And I know a lot about 997s, but the way that this guy can talk is amazing. So I really would recommend you check out those. He's got one on second gen 997s, which is really good, that he does with Vu and my old client Diane, that they talk about her 911 GTS. And that's great. And he also does one on really good pre-purchase inspections of 997s. They're awesome cars as far as modern Porsches are concerned. I don't think it gets better than these cars. And I really recommend that you guys at least go check them out and take them for a drive. But as far as listeners are concerned, I've got a guy that chimed in. His name's Connor. He is the media director for Harper Porsche Group down in I think it's Tennessee.
Yeah,
And they
Knoxville area.
are they are working on Porsche Classic Restoration Challenge, which is a Porsche competition where they put dealers against each other to restore or individualize cars. And they put together a really amazing car that is on their Instagram. This is a real Carrera RS. It's a 92 that they painted in some form of chroma flare paint, which looks insane. It's got real speed lines on it, I'm sure. And they put a RS spec 3.8 liter engine in it, and it's amazing. And I'd really recommend that you go check out their Instagram page, which is Harper Porsche. And then my other buddy, which I hope to have, maybe Connor will jump on the podcast too, but I also hope to have my buddy Steve on. Steve runs Porsche Gaudens Classic Department out in Las Vegas. This is their car this year, which is a 1988 944 Turbo S. And they put together what I believe is one of the best videos ever to introduce this car. And I really recommend going and checking out their Instagram page, which is
Hey,
Gauden.
Casey, link that to me, link it to me, and I'll put it in the show
Yep.
description today. Any of these
Sure.
people that you want us to shout out to, just send me the links. And I'll make sure that we put them into show description. But Casey, you did have another question. This came in from somebody in the PCA. This first name of Jeffrey. You're the one that put it in. I guess
I don't think that was a question. I was
you're
just
right. It wasn't.
I was just putting that in because you guys were making fun of me for being affiliated with the Porsche Club of America and trying to help out their patrons that have questions about 997. And
Is he trying to dig on us? I think
he
that
was
was
very
That sounds
happy.
kind of like,
He was
No,
a
Casey.
listener of the podcast and was happy that I took that position, although he might not be happy after all of my rambling today.
So Casey, we
You've
weren't
done
making fun of
fine.
you from your 997 expertise. We were making fun of you for a whole bunch of other reasons.
Fair
Yes.
point and taken.
Yeah, but listen, Jeffrey Clark, if you do, and he's the president of the Ohio Valley region, and I love messages like this, and I've got to renew my PCA membership is what this is reminding me. But if you guys have any specific questions, send them to Casey as far as PCA, or post them over on Instagram at Full Throttle Talk, and we'll certainly answer your questions. Your questions drive the topics and the theme of these shows. So Dave, as we wrap up for today, and remember the notes from today's podcast, they're exhaustive, are going to be in today's show description. Dave, anything else you'd like to say as we round up today's
no,
podcast?
just, hey, if you're looking for a Porsche, looking for an air-cooled Porsche, give us a call here at Thunderworks, right? I mean, I've got several. I have become the Targa king as well, so keep that in mind. If you're looking for a Targa, give me a shout.
That is a perfect opportunity for merch. We need Dave dressed up like the Tiger King in front of a Targa, like with a mullet. I think Paul could probably figure that out.
Yeah.
We'll make that work. I
The
tried a
Tiger.
couple of weeks ago with my pith helmet. It didn't really get pulled off very well.
You need a new hat.
Yeah, well, I need a hat of some kind, clearly. So there, my lights are shining off the top of my head. My
I'm
wife
catching up,
complains
man.
about that.
I'm
Okay,
catching
we're all
up.
there.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to, okay, moving
No
on.
comment, Tim. No comment from you.
No, hey, I got my hair. I'm doing everything to keep it. All it's going to say is there's some FDA approved stuff that you guys can be spreading on your heads. It'll keep that shit in your head longer. As in your hair. I strongly encourage you to pursue that. It's always a good idea to keep what you have for as long as you can. That's all I have to say about that without trying to hurt Dave's feelings, who should have gotten
Thank
that
you.
advice about 40 years ago. All right. So with that said, love and prayers to you, Paul. We know you're watching or listening. Hopefully we did a good show that you can be proud of. In the meantime, please get better as fast as possible so you can get back on the show and you can start helping me hold these guys to the line. And Casey, really seriously, great job on all your information today. I know you think you were giving too much information, but you know as well as I do, the people that were interested in this, even casually interested in it, we're really appreciative of the fact that you took the time to do so much research. So hats off to you, my friend.
Yeah, and if anybody has any more direct questions, feel free to message me on Instagram or Casey at Group C Curation. I know that it's in the bottom of all of the emails or of our website or episodes here. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Yep, there you go. So if you guys are looking for Porsche work, interior work, any sort of things, he's got our, Dave's got our 72, 73, 911 RSR, and he's upgrading the interior. He's doing some other things to it. You definitely want to look in this guy. And I'll say, as far as Thunderworks goes, I give him a plug every week, is you won't feel ripped off. And I know that's something that is not, people don't like to talk about when they feel taken advantage of. But a lot of the Porsche shops out there nowadays, they overcharge, they make you wait too long. It's essentially not a very customer-centric experience, and that's not the case with Thunderworks. So just definitely keep that in mind. And obviously, Casey's spinning up an amazing business helping folks get their cars sold on Bring a Trailer. Do connect with either of these guys. And Paul, God bless everyone, and God bless you, Paul, and your family. So thrilled to hear that your recovery is going so well. And we'll see everyone on the show next week. See you guys later.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
later.
Bye.
Bye.